Hello and welcome to my Specialization Introduction and Outdoor Content Guide for the Retribution Paladin in World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. If you haven't watched the primer video for this series, I recommend that you do that. There'll be a link in the description below, and that will get you up to speed on what we're doing in this video. Now we're here on our Retribution Paladin. We've got our action bars up and empty. If we go into our talent tree, these are the talents you can select to fulfill the requirements laid out in the primer video. Now that we've done that, we're going to get into our spell book and start organizing our spells. Now, I won't give a in-depth description about every single spell in here, but I will give at least a brief description so you know what the spell does and why it's going into the area that it is. So we're kicking things off with Avenging Wrath. This is a offensive cooldown ability we can use. It will increase your damage, healing, and critical strike chance by 20% for 20 seconds. Blade of Justice is part of our core rotation. Blessing of Freedom is a combat utility ability that gives immunity to movement impairing effects to a friendly target. Probably not going to use this often in open world content, so we'll put that over on our right hand side here. Blessing of Protection. This is a defensive cooldown that grants a friendly target immunity to physical damage and harmful effects for 10 seconds. This also will cause forbearance on your target. So this gives you a debuff called forbearance. And basically, if you have forbearance, you can't be affected by abilities that would give you forbearance. So this is on a few different paladin abilities. Next, we have Cleanse Toxins. This is another combat utility ability that we're probably not going to use very often. It will remove poison and disease effects from the target. Crusader Strike is part of our core rotation. Divine Shield is a defensive cooldown we could use. It grants immunity to all damage and harmful effects for 8 seconds. This will cause forbearance and can't be used if you have, or can't affect you if you have forbearance. Next, we have Divine Steed. This is a combat utility ability. It puts you onto your mount and gives you 100% movement speed for 3 seconds. You can use it indoors or while you're in combat as well. Divine Storm is part of our core rotation. Flash of Light is a combat utility ability. It is a quick cast spell that is kind of mana inefficient, but we can use that to heal ourselves. Greater Blessing of Kings. So this is an ability that we're going to put down here with our combat utility stuff on the right hand side. We're also going to go ahead and drag down Greater Blessing of Wisdom. So either one of these you can use to place a powerful blessing on a single ally for 1 hour, granting a shield that absorbs up to 743 damage, so we could put that on. And our Blessing of Wisdom can be granted to a single ally for 1 hour. This restores 1% of their maximum health and mana every 10 seconds. So we want to keep both of those up on ourselves at all times. We put them down here to remember, hey, keep these on our selves. So Greater Blessing of Kings, that's going to absorb the next 742 damage we take, and we'll get that every 6 seconds. And then also we're going to regenerate 1% health and mana every 10 seconds. So just a nice passive, survivability buffs there. Hammer of Justice is a 6-second stun that goes in our crowd control section. Hand of Hindrance is also a crowd control ability that will reduce the movement speed of a target by 70% for 10 seconds. Hand of Reckoning is the Paladin Taunt. We're not going to use that much, but it does have some limited application in outdoor content. You can use it to get like a melee enemy to come over to you if you want. So we're going to put that on the right hand side here. Judgment is part of our core rotation. Lay on Hands is a defensive ability. It will heal a friendly target for an amount equal to your maximum health, and you can cast this on yourself as well to get a full heal. This does cause forbearance, and you can't be affected by it if you have forbearance. Next, we have Rebuke. This is our interrupt ability. It will interrupt spell casting, and we'll put that in our crowd control section. Redemption is our single target resurrection spell. It will bring a friendly player back to life, but can only be used outside of combat. So that'll go in our miscellaneous area. Shield of Vengeance. This is a defensive or offensive cooldown, depending on how you want to use it. Generally, I consider it to be a defensive cooldown. It creates a barrier of holy light. This absorbs a bunch of damage, and when the shield, the barrier, expires, it inflicts all that absorbed damage to targets around you. So it splits up however much damage amongst the different enemies around you and kind of does a little, explosive effect. But generally, you're going to hit this when you want to absorb damage, because if you don't absorb damage, then you're not going to reflect any of that damage out in that explosion. So that's why I consider it more of a defensive ability. Templar's Verdict is part of our core rotation. And that's it. That's all the active abilities. So let's talk about the resources available to the Retribution Paladin. You've got access to 2 different resources. The first is mana. You have a certain amount of mana, and you start with your full pool of it available at the start of combat. You will spend that to cast abilities. For the most part, it's kind of irrelevant, but if for some reason you did run out of it, you won't be able to cast some of your abilities. The more important resource is our Holy Power. So this is a resource that is used. You start combat with 0, and you can build up to 5 Holy Power. So you can build up to 5 Holy Power, and then you will spend that Holy Power on abilities that will deal damage and things. So your flow of combat is basically build up your Holy Power, and then spend it, and then build it up and spend it. And you just go through that cycle over and over again. So let's talk about the core rotation for the Retribution Paladin. So since you start combat with no Holy Power, you're going to want to build up Holy Power to spend on your abilities. You're going to do that first by casting Blade of Justice. This is an instant cast ability. It has a 9.3 second cooldown. It pierces an enemy with a Blade of Light, dealing a decent amount of damage, and generates 2 Holy Power. Now, most of your Holy Power spending abilities require 3 Holy Power, so 2 isn't quite enough, so you still have to build up some more. You can do that by casting Crusader Strike, which is a ability with a 5.3 second recharge. You start with 2 charges of it, and this will generate 1 Holy Power. So if you do Blade of Justice into Crusader Strike, then you'll have 3, and you can spend that on an ability, or you can do Blade of Justice into Judgment. Judgment has an 11 second cooldown, so a longer cooldown. It deals an okay amount of damage, and then makes your target take 25% increased damage from your next ability that costs Holy Power. It also will generate 1 Holy Power. So usually what you want to do when you start combat is you want to do Blade of Justice, then Judgment. That gives you 3 Holy Power. Then you will spin that on whichever ability you want to cast for the increased damage. Then you will start casting Crusader Strike to build up Holy Power while you're waiting for Blade of Justice and Judgment to come off of cooldown. So that's usually what you want to do. Now, as far as spending Holy Power goes, you have 2 abilities that you can use that spend Holy Power. The first one is Templar's Verdict. This will consume 3 Holy Power to deal a large amount of damage to 1 target. So if you're fighting 1 enemy, you're going to want to use Templar's Verdict. Or if you want to kill 1 specific enemy, you use Templar's Verdict. The other ability you have is Divine Storm. This also costs 3 Holy Power, and it unleashes a whirl of energy that does a decent amount of damage to all nearby enemies. So that's how it goes. You use the first 3 abilities here, your Blade of Justice, Crusader Strike, and Judgment, to build up Holy Power. Then you spend that Holy Power on Templar's Verdict if you're fighting a single target, or Divine Storm if you are fighting multiple targets. So let's go down and take a look at how this is going to work in action. We'll fight this one over here. So we're going to cast our Blade of Justice. We're going to then do our Judgment. That gives us our 3 Holy Power and increases the damage of our next Holy Power spender. So then we can use Templar's Verdict on a single target. So let's do that a little bit faster, and we'll show how you will then fill with Crusader Strike. So Blade of Justice, Judgment, Templar's Verdict. These are on cooldown, so you Crusader Strike, Crusader Strike. Now you got a little bit of dead time here. You can Blade of Justice, Judgment. You're at 5 here, so you want to make sure you spend some. Crusader, you've got enough to spend again, so you can Templar's Verdict. And then we can go Blade of Justice, Judgment, Templar's Verdict. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to generate holy power. If you're already at 5, you don't want to use these abilities. You want to spend something so that you're not generating holy power that gets wasted. Alright, so that is the basic rotation. We need to take a look at our passive abilities now. So the Retribution Paladin does have a few passive abilities. We have Retribution. When a party or raid member within 40 yards dies, you get some buffs. That's not really a thing in open world content, but your buffs, you get 20% increased damage done and 30% reduced damage taken for 10 seconds. So if you're by yourself, this is totally useless. Hopefully, if you're with a friend, you're not dying in open world content, so this is also useless. But on the off chance that they do die, you get a nice buff. Then we have our Mastery, which just increases our holy damage done. We have Heart of the Crusader. All paladins have this. You move 20% faster while you're mounted, and this won't stack with other speed increasing buffs, but just in general, if you're on your mount, you're faster than everybody else. And then the one that actually is relevant to your rotation is Art of War. Your auto attacks have a chance to reset the cooldown on Blade of Justice. And Blade of Justice is our ability here. We're casting at the beginning that gives us 2 holy power. So as we're auto attacking, we have a chance to reset the cooldown on this, being able to instant cast it again, generate 2 holy power. And that's going to help us build up into our being able to use our holy power spenders a lot faster. So let's take a look at that and see if we can see that Art of War actually happen. So we'll do our Blade of Justice into our Judgment, into our Templar's Verdict, and this graphic here lets you know that the cooldown on your Blade of Justice was reset. Alright, so we'll see if we can get that to pop up one more time. Looks like we aren't having any luck at the moment. There we go. Alright, so that's that passive ability. So that is the core rotation of the Retribution Paladin. So now we're going to get into our talents and try to create a build that's going to work well in open world content. So let's go ahead and we will set that up. Okay, so this is the build that I recommend you use in open world content. It's not the only build that you can use, but it's the one I like, recommend, and will be showing off at the end of this video. So we're going to go through each talent, talk about what it does, and why we're including it in the build, starting with Zeal. Zeal. Judgment empowers you with Holy Zeal, causing your next 3 auto attacks to occur 30% faster and deal an additional holy damage. So every time we cast Judgment, which is the second thing we're casting in combat, we're going to get some faster auto attacks, which means we're going to get more chances to cause Art of War to proc so that we can cast Blade of Justice again. Also, each of those auto attacks is going to deal increased damage. So if this isn't really your cup of tea, you can choose either one of these abilities as well. I prefer this one because it's very passive and you don't have to think about it too much. Our next ability is Blade of Wrath. Art of War resets the cooldown of Blade of Justice 100% more often and increases its damage by 25%. So now, if we look at this here, Art of War, our auto attacks have a chance to reset the cooldown of Blade of Justice. With Blade of Wrath, they have double the amount of chance to do that. Which means, once again, we get our nice... This does a pretty good amount of damage, but more importantly, it gives us 2 holy power compared to our other abilities, which only give us 1. So we can generate holy power a lot faster to get up to where we can spend it on our Templar's Verdict or Divine Storm. Next, Blinding Light is a crowd control ability. It has a 1.5 minute cooldown. It emits a dazzling light in all directions, blinding enemies within 10 yards, causing them to wander disoriented for 6 seconds. Non-holy damage will break the disorient effect, but luckily the majority of our damage from our abilities is holy, so that will not cause the disorient effect to break. So this is a great crowd control ability for us. Next, we have Wake of Ashes. This is an ability. We're going to add it into our offensive cooldown section. It has a 45-second cooldown. It lashes out at your enemies, dealing a really big chunk of damage to all enemies within 12 yards in front of you, and it reduces their movement speed. If you use this against demons and undead, they're stunned for 5 seconds. But the key here is this will generate 5 holy power. So if we're in a situation where everything is on cooldown, we need that extra bit of damage, we can cast this, deal a buttload of damage with the ability, then have 5 holy power to spend on our Templar's Verdict or Divine Storm right away. Next, we have Cavalier. This gives our Divine Steed 2 charges. So remember, Divine Steed, that's going to put you on your mount. And it's going to give you 100% increased movement speed. With this talent, now that ability has 2 charges. And on a Paladin, we don't have a lot of ways to increase our mobility. So having those 2 charges actually really does make a big difference. Next, we have our Selfless Healer. Selfless Healer. Our Selfless Healer. Your holy power spending abilities, so our Templar's Verdict and Divine Storm, reduce the cast time of your next flash of light by 25% and increase its healing done by 10%. This stacks up to 4 times. Now, our flash of light is the ability we use to heal ourselves should we need to. So as we are using our holy power spending abilities, we can get the cast time of flash of light reduced by 100%, so making it an instant cast, and increase the healing that it does by 40%. So just a great way to increase the 1 healing ability we have to keep ourselves from dying. And then finally, Divine Purpose. Your abilities that consume holy power, so once again, Templar's Verdict, Divine Storm, have a 15% chance to make your next ability that consumes holy power free, so it'll cost no holy power at all, and it will deal 30% increased damage and healing. So this is a nice proc where when we cast our spenders, we sometimes have the chance to immediately cast another one for free. That does increased damage. So as far as this goes, it doesn't change up our rotation that much. The main thing is that we're going to get our Blade of Wrath. We'll get those resets on our Blade of Justice a lot more. So we can Blade of Justice, go into our Judgment, into our Templar's Verdict, Crusader Strike, and with that talent, we got absolutely nothing here. So, Blade of Justice, Judgment, we're going to use our Templar's Verdict. We did what I said we shouldn't have done, which is we generated Holy Power when we didn't need to. So here, we'll want to spend Holy Power. Alright, cast our Judgment, build it back up. The thing I find hilarious here is we're getting like no procs of that Blade of Justice. And now we have built our Flash of Light up to be entirely instant cast and deal increased healing to us. So that is the rotation. The next thing to do is talk about the PvP talents you can take if you want to toggle on War Mode and mainly focus on PvE. So the first talent I recommend is Relentless. This will replace your Honorable Medallion, turn it into a passive ability that will reduce the duration of crowd control effects on you by 20%. It's a nice set it and forget it talent. Then we have Unbound Freedom. Blessing of Freedom also increases movement speed by 30%. So now, whereas we had Blessing of Freedom as an ability we weren't going to use very often, every 25 seconds we can cast this on ourselves for 30% increased movement speed for 8 seconds. And this is a very nice mobility increasing ability. So like I said earlier, on a Paladin we don't have a lot of ways to increase our mobility, so this is pretty huge being able to take this talent. Next we have Seraphim's Blessing. When you or nearby allies within 40 yards drop below 40% health, your next Flash of Light cast within 5 seconds is instant with 50% increased healing. This effect cannot occur more than once every 15 seconds, so if we do get low and for whatever reason, we haven't built up our Selfless Healer, we can get that free instant cast of Flash of Light with 50% increased healing. Finally, Divine Punisher. Casting 2 consecutive judgments on the same enemy will generate 3 holy power. So that just gives us more ways to generate that holy power to be able to use our spenders to deal a significant amount of damage to our opponent. Alright, so those are the talents I recommend that you take for PvP if you're going to toggle on War Mode and mainly focus on PvE. The next thing to do is take this out into the open world and try it out against some different enemies. So I will cut to that, and I'll see you there. Alright, so we're here in Suramar City, and we're going to take the build down and try it out against a few different types of enemies here. So remember, our Blade of Justice does have a 12-yard range, so we can go ahead and trigger that. There we go. Use that straight into our Judgment. That enemy is dead, so we're going to want to go ahead and use up our little buff there. Alright, we use our Holy Power Spender, single target, we use Templar's Verdict. We got the cooldown on our Blade of Justice reduced again. So Blade of Justice, Judgment, Templar's Verdict. We've got 2 Holy Powers, so our Blade of Justice this time will give us enough to do a Templar's Verdict right away. Alright. This symbol here means that we got our Divine Purpose, which makes our next Holy Power Spender free. Alright. The ability you have with the longest range on it is going to be your Judgment, so you can use that to pull enemies over to you. You can also use your Taunt, like I mentioned. Use your Hand of Reckoning. That'll get a target to come over to you as well. Let's go ahead and we'll use our Blade of Justice here. We've got our abilities. Divine Storm will deal damage to multiple targets. Then we got our Judgment into our Templar's Verdict. We use our Blade of Justice. We use our Crusader Strike. And there we go. Alright, so you can see how that kind of works. You're going to want to, build up that holy power and make sure you spend it and don't generate holy power when you're already at your maximum of 5. So let's go ahead and grab a couple enemies here. This guy's got a little more health, so it should provide us with a little bit more of a challenge. So we're going to focus on this guy at first. We've got 5 points, so we're going to Divine Storm. Use our Judgment. Divine Storm again. Use our Crusader Strikes. Get that up there. We got our Blade of Justice back. We're going to Divine Storm. We're basically just going to keep casting Divine Storm until these other guys die. We also could target them first and try to take them down if we wanted to. Our Flash of Light, we got an instant cast, so we can heal up from that. And there we go. We were able to kill them pretty quickly. On a lot of specializations, this guy with the most health ends up dying way after everybody else. Let's pull these guys over. Blade of Justice, Crusader Strike. Got our cooldown on Blade of Justice again. We can use our Divine Storm. Blade of Justice. Got the cooldown reduced again. Judgment. Blade of Justice. And dead. So this build packs quite a lot of punch. As you can see, the only thing you gotta really pay attention to is your health. Because you don't have a lot of ways to heal yourself. You mainly are depending on your Flash of Light. Which, as you can see, it doesn't really heal you for too much, so it's not going to save you if you're in a sticky situation. That's where you're going to want to use your defensive cooldowns over here. Also, if you get yourself into a position where you're fighting some pretty tough enemies, don't be afraid to use your offensive cooldowns as well. So we're going to go and find a elite. Should be one over here. No, not that one. We'll find them in a minute. In the time being, we'll go up here and kill this rare spawn. Alright. So here we'll use our Blade of Justice. We'll Blade of Justice again. That gives us a Divine Storm. We can Divine Storm again because we got the free one. And as you can see, we did a buttload of damage there. Alright, so we can do our Judgment into our Blade of Justice. We can use our Templar's Verdict. We got our Blade of Justice cooldown reset. Templar's Verdict again. Blade of Justice reset. Use our Judgment into our Templar's Verdict. And we're able to kill them just fine. So, I wanted to find our chunk of elites here. But I don't see them. They're usually here. So we'll go over here where we have a nice elite demon. And we'll kind of show off incorporating Wake of Ashes into our rotation. Alright, so we're going to go through. We are not a tank, but we're going to grab a couple of enemies here. See what happens if we get ourselves into a spot of trouble. Alright, so we're going to want to... Oh, we didn't even grab this guy. Come on, dude. Let's fight. Alright, so Blade of Justice. We're going to cast our Judgment into our Templar's Verdict here, because we're kind of waiting on these other guys to get to us. Against demons, Wake of Ashes will stun them. Use our Divine Storm. Got our cooldown reset again. Alright, there we go. Use our Judgment. And we're good. We're still in combat with somebody. It's probably this guy. Oh, nope, it's that guy. The eyeball saw us. Alright, Blade of Justice into Judgment. Into Templar's Verdict, and dead. So incorporating that Wake of Ashes, that does a significant amount of damage to a target. It hits multiple targets, so you can really use that effectively to take on elites and rare spawns, or to just take out a big group of enemies all at once. So, I hope that has helped you to understand the Retribution Paladin a little bit better, giving you the confidence to get on your own Retribution Paladin, get out there, try some leveling, some farming, see if it's something you might be interested in playing in Battle for Azeroth. If you like the video, throw me a thumbs up or subscription or whatever you want to do to keep encouraging me to make this kind of content. I hope you have a great time in Battle for Azeroth, and thank you for watching.